Okay, welcome everyone to today's infrastructure meeting, 8th of November. We're going to start live streaming. Apologies. We have Councillor Skelt and Councillor Soper. Can I please have someone move that? Moved Grant, seconded Darren. Put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. I'm going to dispense with the housekeeping notes. Since we're all councillors, staff and long-serving media, we all know the rules for the evacuation.
Oh,
yeah.
Which one?
Right, I'm going to jump straight into receiving three major late items. They are proposed right-of-way names 182 and 186 Grant Road, proposed right-of-way name for 299 Otaramaka Road, and also temporary road closure for the South City Street Party. Can I have someone move that we receive those late items? Thanks, Alex. Moved and seconded Barry. I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. There is no public forum. Remind everyone of members' interests, and which reminds myself that I have a conflict in the opening item, item 4 for the temporary road closure. Alice being on the committee for the Santa Parade, my wife. Tom is going to chair this item. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. So the minutes will record that Councillor Pottinger declared an interest and stepped down from the chair, in fact stepped down from the committee for the purposes of this discussion. We have the paper temporary road closures Invercargill Santa Parade on page 4. I think this is pretty self-evident, but does anybody have any questions for officers? Done.
Thanks, Chair. Aaron, is there anything different this year to what happened in what was proposed last?
Not to my understanding, but Mr. Pearson will be able to clarify.
Other questions?
So Mr. Pearson was just going to...
There's a slight difference in the...
Sorry, Russell, can we just get you to come to the speaker?
Good afternoon. It's not my paper, but I understand that the parade setup is on Gala Street rather than on Kelvin Street for this year. So I think normally the parade, when they stack the elements, they normally are down Kelvin Street, but I think it's Gala Street. So it's a slight different, but the route's the same. So the disruption will be relatively minor, and we'll publicly advertise the bus route. So it's
Thanks. Through you, Chair. The setup has quite often been on Gala Street in the past, either Gala or Kelvin, so if there's nothing different, I'm happy to remove the three recommendations.
Okay, I have one other question. Sorry, Councillor Kate, you have a question?
No, I'm just going to second it.
Okay, I have a question. Nathan, I notice in the purpose and summary, the paragraph that starts, "This Act allows Council to close the road after consultation with the New Zealand Police in Waka Kotahi." Can I assume that that consultation has already taken place?
I believe so.
Okay, I'll take that as yes. Okay, so we have three recommendations. They're obviously joined, so we'll take them at the same time. Will somebody move those recommendations?
It's been done.
Hugh, will somebody second?
It's been done.
Oh, it's been done already. Okay, Councillor Kate moved. Trish seconded. Is there anybody who wishes to speak against this? Okay, that being the case, I'll put the motion. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. And having had my 1 minute 30 seconds of fame, I'll hand back to the real chair.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you. Right, that takes us now to item 5, which is solid waste update. And we have Peter Nolan. Peter, would you like to please take a seat at a microphone? And the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. You hear me okay? Yep. So, as promised, a continuing update on the solid waste. We can see that this month that waste has started to increase and continues to increase. We'd forecasted last year there'd be a 5 to 6% increase in waste. We're currently running around about 3%. We continue to progress with the initiatives we've put in place, which is to assess the WMMP and the waste activity plan. And we're putting our education strategy together, which includes engaging external specialist waste organisations such as Paracore. And we've been speaking with Environment Southlands for Environment School, Enviro Schools, and we've been speaking with Waste Free Annie, who I believe the children absolutely love, and has some great outcomes from that. All these will be intended to be measured to show the investment in these education providers. In terms of recycling seems to have gone down a bit, but we really don't know what that is at the moment, whether it's the time of year or the reasons behind that, because we've come into a brand new world, I suppose. Ex-COVID, no more masks, people being more abundant and coming out into the environment. So further analysis will be required through the year to have a look through this. We've also gone to market for to fill the waste positions, of which we've had an excellent response. I think we've got some very strong candidates, which we're hoping to appoint in the next few weeks, which will be able to really focus in on this and drive it forward for us.
Okay, so that covers both item 5 and 5.1, both the update. Okay, so I'm going to open the floor for questions of Peter from anyone regarding what the report is about. Do we have any questions? Evelyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to get my head around what, if anything, we can do to make changes, because a lot of people can't burn things anymore, you know, because they don't have fireplaces. So therefore, that's more paper goes to. Do we discourage people from buying newspapers? And sorry, at the back, but the Southland Express not only be online or things like that. I'm struggling to get my head around how we can make meaningful changes to some of this when it's not actually really within council or council officers' power to make that change. We can do all the education we like, but there's some realities that we've got to come to grips with, and if we can't be disposing of the rubbish in our own backyard or in our own fireplace or whatever, then we put it in our bins. What are the alternatives that we should be showing to the community to make a difference?
I'm happy to take that one if you'd like, Pete. So I guess what you're talking about, Evelyn, is a more strategic, I guess, approach moving forward. And that's something that we'd flagged that we wanted to kick off at about this time this year, post the election process, so that we could take everybody, I guess, through that process of what's happening nationally in the waste space, because you're absolutely right. Our role as council is only part of that broader picture. There are some things that we can do locally in terms of our contamination rates are still high in terms of what's going into the recycling bins. So that means that not everything that we would like to recycle, that people are actually putting out in their bins, can be recycled, because once those contamination rates are too high, some recycling does have to go to the landfill. So the education side of it can really help us clean up our act so that we're producing good quality recycling that has better chance of being ultimately diverted from landfill. We also need to look at what funding is available federally and perhaps what we can do at a regional level in terms of dealing with more locally. But that's a process that we're going to run over the next 6 to 12 months to look at what can we do in the waste space strategically moving forward over the next 5-10 years.
So, as a follow-up to that, does that mean perhaps that we need to look at whether we target once a month we will collect your paper if you've if you've put it separately, tied a string around it, put it there, or your cardboard or things like that, so that it's not going into your yellow bin and necessarily having other things put on top of it? Is that part of the answer?
Ideally not, because the moment we start separating things out of bins, we have to have people on the side of the road collecting them. And that's a problem for the waste industry, because people outside of trucks, too many people are still being injured and killed going under vehicles. So ideally we'd be looking at solutions that still keep people in trucks, but it may mean that we are looking to divert into more bins, things like that. And there may be some push from central government as well that mandate diverting into more bins as well.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Clark.
Yep,
and then Barry.
Thank you. Aaron, while we've got your ear, I guess a couple of issues. I noticed on page 15 of the report here that it talks about bond contracting, checking the bins. We've had this before, so this is not the first time. And I guess leading on from what Evelyn said is the contamination is predominantly glass, isn't it? So one of the issues that we have as a council is that we only have 2 bins. Most other councils, I think only us and Christchurch are the odd ones out, have 3 bins. So they take glass out of the system. And while you leave it in the recycling bin, which most people do because they think glass can be recycled, it breaks up, it contaminates everything else, and then some of it ends up in landfill, which costs everybody. So, I mean, we've been around this for, I don't know, 3-4 years now, I guess. We need to make some tough decisions somewhere along the line, I'm picking. About whether we have a 3rd bin or not, what we do with the glass. I guess in the interim, is it your advice that the glass should go into the non-recyclable bin?
Thanks for the question. Not at this stage. So we've been working closely with the contractor. We know that glass in the mixed recycle bin causes a problem at the processing facility, but it's not to such an extent that at this stage they're saying to us, you have to get it out right now. They are giving us some time to explore whether or not we would be getting it out via a separate glass bin, and what other methods we have of dealing with it. Right. We have had some discussions with Christchurch as well as to whether there's any market for our glass up there in terms of back into bottles, but at this stage that's unlikely. So we aren't at this stage looking at that whole of life recycling. We are just simply looking at that diversion into roading aggregates, things like that. Definitely something though, one of those chunky issues we're going to need to bring back to council to work through over the next 6 to 12 months.
There's a couple of other issues on the same page. I see the waste resourcing structure has a manager, coordinator and a commercial contracts manager. Is that purely for ICC?
No, so that covers both that covers waste net obligations as well as ICC.
Okay, and finally, down the bottom it says, and I've raised this before, is that Recycle South might be moving to Makarewa, and while that might be their option to do that commercially, if we've got a contract with them, we've got some control as well. And so at the moment, Recycle South provide a drop-in slots on the side of the building where you can recycle stuff. So no secret, there's no city council recycling into Ototara, for argument's sake, which is 10% of our population base. And I'm not sure anybody in all the people in Ototara would want that. But at the moment we take stuff into town. So I'm picking that people who live in Ototara will not go to Makarewa to take their glass and tins and other things. So will there be some facility in town where that can still be dropped off? Do you know?
So at this stage, we haven't had confirmation from the contractor as to what elements of their operation may move to Makarua. They may continue to keep the processing where it is, but we have directed them that if there was an eventuality where they did move that processing, that it would need to come back to council to discuss the impacts of that, and that we expected that there would still be a requirement to have that public drop-off facility in the city.
And just a final question, which is back on the bond contracting proposal to check the bins. So what are we potentially asking them to check? Because you said to me before that there's no intention at this stage to take glass out of the recycling bin, which is where it does the damage at the moment because it breaks once it gets in the trucks. So if we're not giving them the message to put it in the other bin, then what would we be checking?
So at the moment, we are exploring some proposals around checking. What we do need to work through is the balance between, I guess, carrot and stick, making sure that we've got the right education balance as well as the right regulatory balance. But in terms of what we're actually checking, we wind up in the recycle bin with a range of items that aren't recyclable at all, down to rubbish, nappies, surprisingly sometimes dead animals in the recycling bin. Those are the things that we want to clean up. We want to make sure that only those things that we are advising are recyclable are going into that bin.
So it's not a focus on glass at this stage?
No, not at this stage.
Thank you. It's all good.
Barry.
Yeah, no, my question's been answered. I was going to bring up about the cross contamination between the glass and the cardboard. Sounds like you're on the case already.
Okay, Ria.
Through you, Mr. Chair, part of my question's also been answered back to Nobby. But what I wanted to come back to was the strategic direction with the recycling. And I wondered if there had been a view by council strategically to look at glass recycling hubs throughout our city, maybe ILT premises, to have a specific targeted area for that glass to go to, albeit you could add tin as well. We used to do that in the 80s and 90s. So that always helped, and it could help with that cross-contamination.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I'm aware of in other areas where they haven't had a separate glass collection, that they have had those areas where you can drop off at supermarkets, stadiums, things like that. The difficulty we have down here at the bottom of the South Island is you have to have somewhere to then send the glass to be recycled back into bottles. And at the moment, we don't have that market. Queenstown, I think, were one of the last ones who managed to get into Christchurch and actually have their glass whole of life recycled. They are even struggling to keep it going there because what they've found now is they've been able to clean up their contamination, but the transport process is breaking the glass up, and OI, who do the processing out of Christchurch, have so much glass coming to them. They're becoming quite picky about, they want the pieces to be bigger and things like that. So that's the difficulty for us, is we simply don't have that South Island recycling plant to send it to.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a bit of information regarding commingling. The whole bin system started in 2010, and it was 2 years, 2012 into it, where WasteNet realised that it was a mistake to have commingling.
Okay.
There's a sort of catch-22 situation where the damage occurs when the truck picks it up and compacts it. So, but the compactor is set at a certain level so that it doesn't damage too much glass, and of course you can't fit as much in that truck as you possibly could, which in turn means you've got to do more trips, which costs more money. So look, removing the glass is one thing we definitely need to look at, without a doubt. And we know we've had before report on that McGregor Concreting is using it for a roading aggregate, a new machine. Peter, part of moving forward, the removal of glass, is that going to come from a report, or how are we going to look at that, the feasibility of that and the costs involved?
We currently actively have some consultants actively looking at that, and looking at sources of funding for it from the materials reduction fund.
And the other one that's on the horizon that other councils are looking at is the removal of kitchen waste from the red bin. Now that changes the game, because the red bin then doesn't have to be collected as often. So is that another one that's being looked at as well?
Sure, we're certainly looking at the frequency and periods for picking up, especially if we end up moving to a 4-bin situation.
And then a composting facility as well.
Sure, definitely.
I've got questions regarding the waste minimisation management plan, and it's around the target of what we're aiming for per capita, and it states in the plan it's 650 kilograms per capita, with 40% of that being diverted away from landfill. Now, are we looking at this increase, this forecast of 6%? In reality, it's been 3%. Are we looking at changing our target? Because is that achievable? Do you know what our current per capita rate is?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can certainly find it and bring it to you.
Just that target is part of our sort of legislative requirement under the Act, is that when we set these, both the visions and targets and goals, I'm just wondering if it's not achievable, then we have to have another look at it.
Sure, and certainly that's something that the people coming into the waste roles will be looking at.
I'm happy to just speak to the fact that going into the next long-term plan, I absolutely agree we have to look at that target and decide what is realistic for our level of investment, because that tendency for councils to around the country talk about having zero increase to landfill comes with a significant investment. Is that actually something that's realistic for Invercargill City, or should we be actually looking at something that is achievable and will drive the right behaviours from us?
I just know also, Peter, I noticed on page 15 where it says plan progress, it states that the WMMP is an evolving document with new legislation coming in now. There's a bit of a catch there, because if this plan changes, aren't we then susceptible to going out to consult, as it states for Section 83 of the Act?
Sure, but this legislation won't be coming in for a period. We've then got to understand what it means to us. We also then have to develop the plan before we even consider going out for consultation.
It's a real tough one, because we've got 4 years to go before this our waste minimisation plan expires, or we start looking at the new one, and it's just not looking that good at the moment. But looking forward to your reports on. So if we're changing to a multiple bin system and stuff like that, we will have to consult, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So any more questions from anyone? We've got 2 lots of recommendations. The first lot of recommendations is on page 6. There's 4 there that we received the solid waste update report. Note the waste to landfill data and trends. Note the recycling data and trends. Note the planned approach with regards to solid waste activities and 12-month plan. Can I please have someone move that? Thank you, Darren. Seconded, Nobby. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour? Aye. And that takes us to the second lot of recommendations. We received the report, solid waste update.
Sorry, Chair, I think that's just the report from the previous meeting. Just for continuity.
Right. Thank you for that. You had me double reporting. Well, that is done and dusted, and that moves us on to the activity report, which covers a myriad of activities within our infrastructure department. So as Erin, you've landed, I see your name at the top of this. We've got everything from speed limit changes, Steed Street artwork, and also a pump house that I think people may want to comment on.
Thank you, Chair. The pieces that I'd just like to highlight and speak to, firstly, with regard to the work that's currently happening with Council with Three Waters reform, just advising that there is quite a bit that's going on in the background with requests for information coming from the new entities into the organisation. So I think we've ticked off a couple, but a couple of weeks ago we had about 6 different requests for information within the business that were all coming in. It is taking up quite a bit of time, both of myself and Michael Day, because they're covering across information both on our assets, but also planning around how we're going to integrate data and digital IT systems, what has to happen across people and capability, what are staff's conditions, things like that. So that's all information that we're having to proactively feed into at the moment. So just providing an update that is still happening in the background. The other piece that I just wanted to draw attention to is the work on Stead Street. Obviously, there's been some disruption for the community there with the construction of the stop bank. We're getting close to the end of the disruption for Invercargill City in terms of the artwork is on track to be installed by the end of the year. However, just wanting to note that anybody who's headed out that way will be aware that work has commenced from Environment Southland on the pump station out there. That will also continue to have an impact on traffic over the next 12 months potentially. We're just working with them to try to keep abreast of the sequencing of their works. That will involve work at the pump station site on the side of the road, but also will involve piping under the road, and we're expecting a diversion to be in place for a period of time again when that happens. But we're just working closely with Environment Southland to keep on top of when that will need to happen. The other piece is that we held off resealing that road whilst the stop bank construction was happening. We've now pushed that about as far as we can, and we need to reseal that road in this upcoming season. Only expected to take a few days, less than a week, but just making people aware of that. And the final piece of that will be just noting, as I'm sure the question will be asked, was will that mean that after we seal that road, is it likely that the works happening with the pump station will have to cut into that new seal? That is likely to be the case, but the advice, and I might ask Russell Pearson to speak further to it, is that at the moment we're already having the road starting to break apart. It is actually a better outcome for the road to do a structured cut into it after it's been resealed than it is to wait to reseal that road even longer until that pump station work has been completed. So not ideal, but a better overall outcome. Russell, did you have anything to add to that piece? Okay, and then I'd also ask, can you just come up to the table just to talk through the Drive My Life very briefly?
Excuse me, Erin. Will the community be told about why it's been resealed and then dug up?
We can absolutely do that.
I think it would be useful.
Yeah, just so that they're aware of the fact that
Yes,
we've proactively made that
it.
choice. Yeah.
I would concur with that, because it really is that it is quite a deliberate decision for us to seal the road. We will look to actually limit the seal in the area where the pump station is, so it doesn't, unless it's more economic to do that. So we're just working that through with the contractor. But the explanation that we haven't sealed it and then dug it up is actually the message that we want to do it. It's quite deliberate, because we don't need to hold the seal for a longer period of time. So, thanks for the opportunity just to briefly overview the Drive My Life. Drive My Life is one of our road safety promotion and educational programs that we support with our shared service with ourselves, Southern District and Gore District Council. So that's part of a program where the community has come together to actually encourage those people who don't seem to be able to get through their driver license sequencing, and actually support them so they do have a license. So the first time they interact with the police isn't being stopped without a license, and that's been a hugely successful program, and it's helping those people greatly, and it's won a national award. So we think it's one of those road safety opportunities that we want to recognise, because I think it actually does something really great for the wider community and helps those people they become much better, I guess, drivers because the opportunity to be mentored by the wider community, and we look to continue to support that. So happy to answer any questions.
I'd just like to say one thing, that it's been well received in the community. It's actually made a difference for many people's lives. I just want to know.
Thank you.
Nobby.
Yeah, just in relation to the Stead Street area, good to hear that the cultural work is going at the end of the year, because that's going to be quite stunning. Erin, you mentioned possible diversion, so just a couple of issues on that. I earlier last week sent an invite to the Chair of Environment Southland and one of his senior staff to come and talk to us about this whole project. Bit of community unease, I guess, is a nice way of putting it, that we do all the Stead Street stuff and then we hack up the road and do it again because of the pump station. So I guess there's a wanting to understand, but certainly my understanding from the Chair of Environment Southland is it would not create a diversion. It might create one-way traffic as they work through that, but not a around Bay Road type situation again. So it'd be helpful to get some clarification on that, because I'm not sure when he's going to arrive. And the other suggestion that Trish came up with about notifying the community, certainly we want to get onto the Ototara notice board, which is a local notice board, and then those that live in Ototara can deal with the flack that we get, because we'll be able to comment back, because that's actually quite a good way to say, hey, this is the rationale behind why we're doing what we're doing. So, but it would be helpful to know that there's not a diversion.
And I think, unless Russell's got anything to add, we'll do our best to work with Environment Southland to keep on top of that. But primarily, we will be pushing them to provide that good communication.
So on that note,
sorry, just with the issue of the cultural works that you said would be up at the end of the year, will that require any sort of road closure as well, do you think? Given that you can't actually use the bank at the moment?
Only in terms of to the point likely to be potentially some periods of short one way.
That's okay.
But it'll be in the middle of the section, so not those impacts on the roundabouts and the airport that we were wanting to avoid.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
So on that note of the traffic management that Environment Southland will need in certain cases, Russell, are we going to get forewarned? Are we going to get advance notice that with what Nobby was talking about, so we can, they're going to bring it to us?
Each of the stages of their work will require them to submit to us a traffic management plan for council approval to consider what that traffic impact is and how they will manage the traffic.
Right, so they don't just fire ahead and do their stuff, they're going to go through us.
Yep, and each of those have, for instance, they have a daytime and a nighttime plan, so they actually have to have an attended and an unattended site. So that's how we would normally control.
And would that come back to this committee first? Or just be staff operating in the background?
Normally that would be an operational decision that
Okay.
we would manage, but if we had some significant, I guess, issues or greater information we needed to communicate, we would certainly be bringing it as an information item.
No, thanks.
And Russell, correct me if I'm wrong, but that wouldn't include specific dates out of that information.
The dates are often a little bit more difficult, but we would have a range of dates. Often the traffic management is a longer period, but we would be trying to focus it down to make sure we understood fully what they were doing.
Okay, any further questions on the activities report? Yes, Tom.
Chair, we didn't touch at all on the new speed limits. I guess I had, from what I've heard, people seem to have generally accepted it. I mean, I've had nobody beat my door down about it. With one exception, and I know we don't like to talk about individual roads, but I will mention the one exception is from the Retty Bridge to the beach, where I don't think anybody can quite understand why that's urban and 60 kilometres an hour. Is there a reason for that?
That's a question for Russell. Obviously, the research came up with that number.
Part of that, it's a good question, and part of that is that section of the Reedy River to the beach has had a number of crashes. We also believe it's the safe and appropriate speed. Part of that is the shape of the road, and it's a question of how do you make sure it's consistently applied, and we believe the 60 k's is probably more like the environment we would actually like people to be using it. And you are right, we've had quite a smooth transition to the new speed, so it's been quite well received. I guess there's been a few people certainly who have rung me who've had differing views, but generally that's what we're seeing is a reasonable degree of acceptance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? Okay. Alan, you don't want to comment on the speed?
Oh, no, I was just going to mention one thing. You did mention with the, I don't really want to get picky or anything, but you mentioned with the consultation that was undertaken, but to be fair, the consultation did 60% also wanted no change. So you didn't really go with consultation. Plus Karen's Road is another one, another little individual road that I've had a wee bit of feedback on as to why it's 60, gone from 100 to 60, whereas Ototara Road has gone from 100 to 80 and has a lot more houses. And Karen's Road is an arterial route for anybody that works in North Invercargill from Ototara. I'm just wondering why. And I know you'll say there's accidents, but the last accident I know of, don't know exact cause, but it was a head-on, and of course that could happen anywhere. And it could be due to a sun, cell phones, or anything.
So part of Curran Road is the crash history on the road, which is reasonably high, and that's part of what led us to suggest that 60 kilometres an hour. Typically, the crashes that we're seeing are on the bends, which and the lead up speed into it. So that's what made us propose that speed of 60 k's.
Okay, Pania.
Just in regards to the road speed limits and that, I know we've always had a problem with the Green Point as well as Maui, and there's still actually concerns being raised that they still seem to be very high within the Green Point piece as you come off Highway 1. Just see the entry part there. That's that bit there.
Certainly the speeds we think we've got are in the right direction, and I would think in time, as people become more familiar with those speeds, we'll have an opportunity to either adjust. We've had people ring us up and say they're too fast, exactly that. We want them slower, but I guess I would like to hope that some of that would be more of an educational and bedding down time, and then we can go back and readdress any that we think we've need a little tweak on the end of it.
Yeah, I think it's because it's gravel roads don't help the situation. Okay, thanks. But also, I just want to come back to the Drive My Life. I see that the data that you've sort of provided is like 2020. Is there anything sort of more current, or is there intentions for ICC to be more involved in this program?
I think the 2020 data is the last full year. Obviously, with COVID, we've had a little bit of disruptions through there. Our commitment into the program is through our road safety programs, through our subsidised work stream with Waka Katahi. So I guess it's a 3-year cycle, but it's certainly one of the road safety promotional areas that we continue to think is good value for money, along with
it's definitely
other items that like Right Track, which I'll report next activity on.
Sorry,
Okay.
can I just have a quick
Yes.
question? Just in terms of the Maui road speed there, I know that there's a local group there that has been in contact with you, quite concerned about the increase in the road traffic, the speed limit, and that was due to the fact that they have high use in certain times of the year, and there's lots of young children on that gravel road, and they're quite fearsome that their children will get hurt. So although the speed limit's been put there, at what time of consultation do you go back and revisit that the community there feels that after the education that they are happy with that speed?
Maui Road was previously 100 kilometres an hour, and during the, I guess, lead into this change, we went through and put signs up and posted the current speed, and then we removed those, we replaced them with the new speed. So the speed on a Maui Road is now 60 kilometres an hour, which could be reduced further should the community wish for going forward. But I would also remind, I guess, the wider community that it is drive to the conditions, drive at a safe speed. So I guess the speed limit isn't the speed you have to; it's the maximum speed you're allowed to. So I would think in the next somewhere in the next 12 to 24 months would be a good period of time to address some of those, because we'll get some stability over where the changes are, and we'll be able to highlight those areas which are too fast, or I guess the question will be is if some of them actually need change, we'll have to decide on what the mechanism for that is.
Thank you.
Alan.
That will also include too slow as well as too fast. When you go will you be revisiting some roads that perhaps
And we would look at
do a
all.
slight increase, like perhaps a bit to the beach, or
We would look at all the speeds, but generally one of the things we do know is that the faster you go, the bigger the crash. So I guess that'll be pretty much on our minds. That
well, that's why we should all just do 10 kilometres an hour, and we'll be good to go.
I guess that's
That's the logic, isn't it?
we continue to have that wider debate about what the right speed. It's what the terminology they use is a safe and appropriate speed. And I think if we actually put in that context, it summarises it rather than a speed limit. What is the safe and appropriate speed you should be travelling? And if everybody did that, then we'd be right.
Councillor Clark was the final.
Yeah, thank you. Just a
Oh,
reflection.
sorry, Mayor Clark. Sorry. Apologies.
This is a final
I'm still
reflection
learning.
on what Russell just said as a response. And I raised this about 6 months ago. People who know that the road between Nelson and Blenheim, high risk area, number of fatal accidents every year. They dropped the speed limit from 100 down to 80. And for one stretch, they've got double yellow lines for about 15 kilometres. They've not had a serious accident in the last 2 years. Yeah, phenomenal. So when you drop it down, when it's high, you see the accidents. When it drops it down, you don't notice that there's actually an improvement. It's not something you observe. So yeah,
Sorry, as of last Thursday, I think there was 312 deaths on our roads across the country, and certainly in the last few days, that number hasn't been static.
No, we've noticed that. Right, we've got 4 recommendations that we received the report that the committee notes the implementation of the speed limit changes on 17 October 2022, notes the broad cross-section of the business receiving information requests as part of the proposed Three Waters transition, and notes the range of works continuing on Stead Street, particularly with Environment Southland, that will continue over the next 12 months, and the resealing of the road. Can I have someone move those, please? Thanks, Ria. Seconded, Evelyn. I put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, that is carried. That takes us on to the first major late item. Do we need Patricia? Welcome.
Afternoon, councillors. This is the first of 2 road naming for this time, and I think by the next month we might have another one to come through. These ones have been sitting waiting for the new council. They are in accordance with our policies. So for the new councillors, towards the end of the last triennium, we put in place a road naming policy which requires developers to provide us with 3 names. Not changes of way, drive or lane, but 3 names to go in the front, and set some criteria about how those names should be determined. So we've been working with both these developers for both papers to come up to what would be appropriate names for those areas. And in front of you, for this first one, which is 182 and 186 Grant Road, there is 3 suggestions for each of the 2 ways that are proposed as part of the subdivision.
Right, Pania.
Just one question. In regards to these proposed names and the policy, have they been sort of considered in relation to the district's culture, heritage and geographical location?
So for these ones, a little work was done about some names. I do believe that there was some request put to the 2 mana whenua about what would be, but the timing has meant I can't recall whether we got a response back. But these have been based, these have been based on historic parts in what was happening in that part of Otatara back in the 1800s.
Okay, any further questions regarding this? It's good that they've also listed their preferred, they've got their 2 preferred options as in Amos and Flaxmill there. Nobby.
I'm happy to move both recommendations, or that we receive the report and the proposed names based on what the developers want.
Okay, so that is with 2.1 will be Amos. 2.2 Flaxmill.
Flaxmill, yep.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Without any further comments or questions, put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried. Thanks. That takes us to the next one, which is 299 Otoramica Road. Patricia, anything? Obviously, their choice there is Nah.
It's Nga Way. The officers looked at the policy and felt that Calder Way may be a more appropriate name. However, if the committee felt that Nga was better, Calder should be put on our list of approved names and may have some links to some future developments within the city.
Darren.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I'm happy to move the recommendation that the report's received and that the right-of-way be named Calder Way. I think Nah Way, given the Southland accent, creates issues, and that people might mishear it as No Way. Because we do have a tendency of adding an R to the end of things, and Nars become Nars.
Yes, Tom. Speaking of accents.
Light-hearted.
Well, I was going to say I like the name Calder. It's another name for the River Clyde, actually, if anybody doesn't know. But I did have a question. I know that council, I don't know if it's a policy, I forget just where it sits, that we would encourage the use of Maori names. We've just approved 3 that are not. I think they're nice names that have been chosen, but I just wondered how that interfaces with that other policy with respect to Maori names.
Are you able to answer that, Patricia?
We're advocating for it. We need to build up a database of appropriate names which would help developers significantly so that they are appropriate names, because developers could put forward te reo names which may not be considered appropriate for the area. So over time we need to build up that database of good names or appropriate names.
Okay, Alex, then Evelyn.
I believe that exact statement was recorded at when we actually had the naming policy arise, and it was an action point was that council officers would take that away and come back to us with a list of appropriate names that had, I'd expect that to have already been done by now.
We have opened it up to on our consultation platform, but we've had very little uptake of people providing names. So we're still working with a local mana whenua to come up with some names that can be used in different areas.
Evelyn.
So the challenge, Mr. Chair, and with all due respect to everybody, is that I think rather than a generic pool of names that people could use, we would really appreciate people looking at the site and looking at something that is relative to the site. So I'm looking at Otoramica, which if I had it right would be Otikarama, but anyway, we won't go there. You could use Rama, which is part of that. You could use Ika, or any other combination thereof, which had some pertinence to the name of the existing road. That wasn't an option that people looked at, and that's fine. But I don't think in terms of having a generic pool, most of the most commonly chosen names have already been used. So what you're really looking now is you're looking at something that might be specific to a location, specific to a use that that place had. For instance, if you look at the one that we've just done out at Otatara, instead of Flaxmill, it could have been Harakeke. Because obviously Harakeke is what you make flax out of. There was, I don't have a problem with what has been chosen. I just think that us providing a pool of names that don't necessarily have any relevance to a specific site is not my preferred option. And the most obvious names have actually already been used.
Pania. Then Nobby.
Also in response to that, totally agree with Evelyn in regards to site-specific type naming, but one of the things that did come from Awaroa was really looking at our natives and utilising that kupu, as well as our bird life, our you know, our environment using those types of names. That's something that meant something to us within this area or this catchment.
Nobby.
Yeah, I don't agree with the pool of names either. I think that's too generic. But maybe we need to think when we're talking with the developer, because that's the first point of call, that we should be encouraging them to think about whether they're open to a suggestion like that. Whether we want to force it or not is another issue, because that creates some issues as well. Because I think historically we've allowed the developers to, you know, give us the pool of ideas. It's not always what they get, but that's the first point of call. It might be helpful for going forward for future options like this for our staff to touch base with either or both of the Mana Whenua reps to suggest a name that might, as everyone said, that might be pertinent to the area that the developer then thinks, well, actually, that's not a bad idea. So I think that's a better way than going just having a generic pool.
Okay.
Surely, if I may speak again, Chair, surely the point is that we need a process. I mean, if I hear the discussion correctly, there is no process by which a trio name could be considered. So rather than have, you know, as Evelyn has said, rather than just have a list of generic names, you know, Kia, Kakapa, all that stuff, that you would have a process by which it might be that they are consulted and that the developer is told of a option.
So at the moment there is a process, so we do go through that.
Oh, we do that?
So we have been reaching out to ask for feedback.
We have commented on other names in the past, and I've been asked to give advice. For example, the subdivision that is going to use a name from one of the Anzacs, I think it was, and I just sort of said, well, we would not give authorisation for a tupuna of ours to be used. However, if that particular whānau wanted to use their person's name, that's up to them. We would not give a tupuna name to a place. So that's a policy sort of matter that we gave some advice on, but yeah.
Okay. Right, we've got two recommendations. First one is we received the report. Second one is the committee has, I take it, decided on Calder Way. Can I have someone move those two? Darren, and seconded Ria. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, that is carried. That takes us to the final item in public, which is the road closures for the South City Street Party. Who's the party person?
Seems I'm the default party person this
You
afternoon.
are the party man.
Apologies for its lateness, but we received a request this morning from the South City team to have a road closure, and to avoid us having to decline it, we've brought it today, so we appreciate the opportunity to present it. In terms of, we haven't yet had the approval from the police in Whakakatahi, but they are pretty supportive, and we know that the process that we've executed in the past to shut Alice Road has worked relatively or very successfully for that relatively short period in the evening with the traffic diverted. So we believe that we will be able to be able to have a safe traffic management system which will cause minimum disruption, which I guess this part of the legislation is the piece that it's looking to achieve. So.
Thanks. I think these particular type of events and really encourage community involvement. So yeah, it's great, and there's no problem. Like the time restraints are very obvious, so it's good that you got it in here. Question's going to start with Barry. Did you have your hand up?
No.
All right, I'm going to go Trish, then Nobby.
So were they told that it was late? Could it be? Could they do it earlier next year?
Thanks for the question. The answer to both those is yes, and our expectation is that they would do it. They've just got their timing a little bit out of whack in this case. So.
Nobby.
So if we are to approve today, which is recommendation 3, I guess, it'll need to be subject to the police being consulted as well, one would assume. So if you want us, I guess if we want to go ahead and approve it today, it would have to be subject to staff getting some approval from the police as well. We just can't. Because I say the Act requires that.
I think if we note that, Aaron, do you want to
Yep.
note? Both from Waka Kotahi and police.
I don't think Waka Kotahi is affected.
Are they not affected?
It's not a state highway.
Waka Kotahi are, we do really require their approval due to the legislation actually asking for the Ministry of Transport's approval, and the Ministry of Transport have now translated in this instance to Waka Kotahi, so they have many hats.
Russell, does the word regulatory approvals cover all of those different required parties that we have to consult with?
That would be fine because the legislation actually specifies the police and.
Excellent. We have 3 recommendations. I've moved Evelyn, seconded Grant. I'll put those motion for those 3 recommendations. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Russell, for that. Right, that takes us into public excluded, but Logan and Louisa, this is only going to take a very, very short time. So if we can come and grab you if you want to wait in the corridor out there. Okay. And streaming. Once I find the item.
I think you'd be keen.
Shit.